Okay, picture this. A government that's not built on politics or ideology, but on pure physics. I mean, a system where every single law has to answer to the fundamental forces of the universe. Well, today, we're going to dive into a simulation of exactly that. A reality where politics, well, it takes a backseat to cosmic law. So let's really dig into that question. I mean, just try to imagine a society where every decision isn't about voters or political parties, but about aligning with the absolute, unyielding laws of thermodynamics and motion. Seriously, what would a government run by the universe's own rulebook even look like? Alright, so here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to peek behind the curtain at how this whole reality is even built. Then we'll get into the one single physical law that basically runs the whole show. After that, we'll see how that law makes the government act almost like a living thing, we'll check its unique pulse, and finally, we'll meet the folks whose job it is to keep reality itself from falling apart.
Okay, let's jump right in with our first section, this idea of a physics-based government. Now, what's really cool is that our source material for this isn't some old history book or a dense research paper. Nope, it's actually a prompt. Think of it like a super complex set of instructions designed to teach an AI how to simulate this entire reality. Basically, how to be a governance simulator.
And honestly, that's what makes this so cool. We're not just reading about a world, we're looking at the architect's blueprint for it. The way this whole prompt works is by translating all of its unique, kind of fictional terms into something it calls a D-norm. And D-norm is just short for Dominion Standard, which, is basically just the real-world stuff that we can actually get our heads around.
This table here is a perfect example of how it works. See, on the left, you've got the system's own unique language, words like astat, ordhat, turn. And on the right, you get the D-norm translation. So an astat is, well, it's just a state. A resident is a citizen. It seems simple, right? But this active translation, this is our key to understanding this entire fascinating system.
Alright, so now let's get to the absolute bedrock of this entire reality, what they call the universal law of flow. Seriously, if you want to understand anything about why this government is built the way it is, you have to start right here, with this one single foundational rule. And this is it, the flow identity. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. It says that for any closed system, energy plus information plus structure, all of that has to equal zero. Always. Think of it like a perfect cosmic accounting book. If you want to build something new, that's increasing the structure. You have to spend energy, and you need information as the blueprint. You literally can't create something from nothing. Every debit needs a credit. So what are these three things? E, I, and S, really? Well, energy is pretty simple. It's the power to do stuff. It's the go. Information is the plan, the blueprint. That's the how. And structure, that's the final product, the physical or even conceptual what that actually gets created. And the crazy part is, every single thing in this universe, from a star to a law to even just a thought, is made up of these three components in a perfect constant balance.
And here's where a simple law of physics starts to sound a whole lot like a philosophy. This quote from the source material really says it all. Where there is world line, there must be flow. Stagnation equals death. Flow equals life. For this society, just standing still is basically the same as cosmic decay. The entire system has to keep moving, keep adapting. So for them, flow isn't just some physical property. It's the very definition of being alive. Okay, so if your entire universe is built on this rule of constant flow and balance, how in the world do you build a government that can keep up? Well, the answer is you design it like the most efficient flow-based system we know of, a living organism. But before we even look at the nuts and bolts of the structure, we have to talk about its single most important ethical rule. It's called the prime axiom, and it says, manage systems and groups, do not manage individuals. I mean, think about that. This is basically a firewall against tyranny that's hardwired right into the government's operating system. Their job is to make sure the whole forest is healthy, not to micromanage every single tree. And here's the structure of that organism. Right at the top, you've got the longhouse, which acts like the brainstem, handling all the core functions. Branching off from that, you have the columns. These are specialized federal branches, kind of like the different lobes of a brain. From there, the whole system connects down through 54 SDOTs. That's their version of states, which are then broken down into smaller communes, until you finally get all the way down to the individual citizens, who they call residents. So what's holding all of this together? What connects everything? It's something called the QPIZ's chain. And the best way to think about it is as the government's central nervous system. It's this incredible fusion of technology, part internet, part super secure civic blockchain, and part biological network that literally carries information and resources through the entire body of the state.
Okay, so we've got this structure, this giant state organism, but what about its rhythm, its heartbeat? How does the system actually work from moment to moment? Well, that's what this next part is all about, making administrative time something you can actually feel.
And the key concept you need to understand here is something called a turn. Now, a turn isn't just a way of measuring time, like a day or a week. No, it's the smallest complete unit of action. It's a single pulse from the governing machine, that moment where a decision gets made, put into action, and recorded.
So you're probably wondering, how long is a turn? Well, the system defines it with this incredible, almost weird precision. One turn is exactly 9.125 Earth days. And that very specific, concrete number is what makes this whole thing feel real. It isn't just some vague idea, right? It's a measurable, tangible rhythm. Just think about that. A little over 9 days for one complete cycle of government action to happen. And these quick little pulses, these turns, they build on each other to create the much larger rhythms of the government. So you have 4 turns that make up one season. 10 of those seasons make an annum, which is basically their year. And a full term for any leadership, a core term, lasts for 6 annums. So you can really see how these small, fast administrative heartbeats scale all the way up to define the entire life of the government.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got a government built on cosmic balance. It's structured like a living organism, and it operates with a super precise rhythm. But what happens when that balance gets thrown off? When something goes wrong? Who steps in? Well, that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, the guardians of the system's flow.
This is where the Federal Bureau of Control, or the FBC, comes in. And their official title is, I kid you not, the Flow Stabilization Authority. Now, these aren't cops or a military force. The best way to think of them is like reality's central bank, or its Federal Reserve. Their whole job is to keep an eye on that big E plus I plus S equation and step in to stop any system from collapsing, whether it's a financial market or an information network.
And the person who runs the FBC is this really fascinating figure, known only as the Controller. But it's their unofficial title that just says everything you need to know. The last honest statistician. Wow. In a universe that is literally built on data and information, the person in charge of keeping it all true, well, that's the ultimate authority, isn't it?
And just look at what this job entails. The controller isn't some politician. They're a physicist economist. Their job isn't to make policy, it's to stabilize statistical truth. And the stakes? They're astronomically high. I mean, here, our regulators worry about a market crash. The controller? They have to worry about reality itself literally tearing at the seams if that fundamental law of flow is ever broken.
And all of this brings us to one last big thought. Breaking down this simulation really shows us a society that's built from the ground up on this principle of universal balance. It's a really wild thought experiment, right? And it leaves us with a pretty compelling question to chew on. If you, yes you, could design one single fundamental rule for our own reality to run on, what would it be?